Steve had all the stuff that I didn't even know about. He knew that Terry and Mom had killed that woman, but Terry said Mom did it, but I don't believe that. So that was when I was about 6 years old. I have no idea why he would say Mom did it, except to just put, maybe he didn't want to get in trouble for doing it. But my mother never got in trouble either. Okay, my name is Terry Heale, and my mother was Jean Hodges, and she was married to Terry Mabry, and she was my mother, so I grew up with them. Well, when I was young, I have fond memories of my mother. She was very eccentric, and she was very intelligent. She was book smart. She could do just about anything she set her mind to do, but she didn't have any common sense. It just wasn't there. She was just kind of floating along and needed someone always to tell her what to do. His name was Terry Mabry, and she met him, I believe, after she left my father. She was living with a girlfriend, and the girlfriend stole all her clothes, and that's how she met Terry, and he bought her clothes and started supporting her. He would tell her what to do, and she just would follow him. As long as he was out of jail, she would follow him and do what he wanted to do. She was probably scared. It's like she was in love with him for a while, but she was probably scared too. I guess while I was very young, like 6 years old, is when they killed that Beddie, and she would just follow along with him. And then after she was with him a while, he would also hold it over her that if she didn't follow him, then he would do something to Steve and I. So then it became, she had to do what he said. Well, he said that my mother did it in a fit of jealousy. I cannot, even in any mind, picture my mother ever pulling a trigger and shooting someone at the back of the head. She couldn't do that, and she never was really jealous of any man. I do not believe that at all. I never believed anything Terry said, so I know that my mother was with him when they buried Beddie, but she did not kill Beddie. I just know she didn't. Yes, she did tell me that she and Terry buried a woman in the desert. Yes. That, I've known. That she told me from years ago. But I never did know for sure, because my mother would always tell stories sometimes. She would just, sometimes she would have one or too many drinks, and then she'd start telling us about Terry. And she told me Terry probably killed a lot more than just Beddie. He'd been in jail since he was like 13 years old or 12 years old. He'd been in juvenile hall. I believed he would dispose of anybody that got in his way. He was charming. He was quiet-spoken. He dressed well. He always had to have everything just perfect. He could charm anybody. He liked jail. I mean, he wouldn't stay out of jail more than a year, if that long. In all his life, he spent more time in jail than he ever did outside. But he was quiet-spoken, and every time he got arrested that I was around, he went quietly. There was no fight or anything. I knew he killed the police officer. I remember that. I remember feeling bad for the children, and he was a young police officer. I was young then. I was maybe 12. I remember my mother listening to the radio because he had gone I knew he had gone out to burglarize somewhere. And I remember my mother listening to the radio. I was supposed to be in bed, but I knew she was listening to the radio, and it talked about the officer being shot. And I know he hid in a ditch not too far from there and could watch them searching all around for him and everything. So he hid in that ditch all night, and then he came home the next morning, and then that's when we packed up and moved to Texas. He got arrested for something else, another crime in Texas, so then my mother and my brother and I and 5 or 6 cats came back. And I was afraid, yes, I was afraid to say anything. And even when he was in jail and I was grown and had my daughter, and I still, because of, there's no protection from them when they're in jail. And it's hard for the police to protect you continually after you've been visited by ex-cons and they come and scare you, then you never know what's going to happen. It's just, you never know what he's going to do and how he would retaliate if we said something. So that's why none of us ever said anything. I had children by then, so I didn't want my children hurt. Mother was remarried when Terry got out of jail, and he started threatening my mother's husband at that time, and my mother, and saying that, you know, they better not ever say anything. And that's when my mother's husband, Jack Hodges, went to the police and told them. And that was another long ordeal because they taped my brother, put a microphone on my brother, and we had to go where he was, and that's where Terry confessed that he didn't confess, he was just telling my brother he better not ever say anything. And it was all recorded, and the police were there, and everything. So that was a big trial and a big thing, and, well, he got the death penalty, so he was in jail 15 years on death row. And then they outlawed death row, so then he got out. My mother, she was married to Jack, and I don't know if she heard of him anymore after that either. And I think he went to, well, I knew he could repair typewriters, and it seems to me like he went to work repairing typewriters for the police department. That's what I heard about him. I don't know which police department, and I don't know for sure what happened after he got out then. I know he died a while back and that he was living in Stockton, but I just found that out from the detective. The last years of my mother's life, she was just happy to be with her cats, and she lived very comfortable, and I never felt that I wasn't loved by my mother. So she was always there. She couldn't do much to help us at times, but she was always there for us. And Terry, he was just a monster that was let out. He had no compassion for people. But he sure fooled a bunch of psychiatrists or the doctors in the prisons because they all thought he had been rehabilitated, and they all thought he would be all right. So he was very smart. He took all kinds of stuff while he was in prison. He was a teacher. He was a secretary. He could take shorthand. He could repair typewriters. He wasn't a dummy. And he knew how to talk to the doctors, knew how to tell everybody how good he was. He just convinced people. It's just, if you lived with him, you knew. He was a wonderful con man.